Check, check. Check 1 2. Okay. Um, Thank you. I've got 2 o'clock. I appreciate the committee staying here on Thursday afternoon. We got a couple of bills here. I'd like to ask Representative Mathis to open us up in a prayer.
Father, we thank you for today. We thank everyone that's here is represented here, that you would bless them, bless their families. Father, we ask that you would be with us in the decisions we're going to make today, that it helps glorify you, it helps the state of Georgia, it helps folks here. Father, we thank you for the many blessings that you've given us. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. Well, here's the status for us today. We got two important bills on the agenda, and I'm going to present one. And of course, Chairman Perkle will. Committee can ask any questions. I'm really not going to take testimony. We've already had hearings on both these bills. I'm not going to take testimony from the audience, but the committee is certainly welcome to ask some questions of either the authors, or if there's some expertise in the audience that any of the committee would like to hear from, we can in a posture to take that, I think, if it doesn't involve getting too long. So with that, I'm going to turn this meeting over to a subcommittee chairman. Our vice chairman and secretary are not here today, had to go home for other reasons. And I'm going to ask Chairman Sam Watson to chair while I present this bill.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where are you going? Table? All right. Good deal. Well, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I present HB 1150. The sub is this today is LC 51014-3S. It's in your packet. This is the second sub we've had. This sub has got very little changes from the last one you had, just some very little to clarify a few things in there. So just to sum up a little bit about this bill, the Freedom Farm, it's a short and simple, but to farmers, it's a very important bill that brings some clarity to our existing laws where there's some ambiguity. I want to go on record to say this bill is not about big farming, but about trying to keep our small family-owned rural farms and urban farms operating without the need to worry about nuisances. People say that they're against this bill, and there's been a lot of misinformation out there. Really need to read it and look at it closely. This legislation assures us that the protection that farmers thought we've always had, and 98% of the farms in our state are small family farms, including mine, are not owned by conglomerates. So this bill is not about protecting big farms. It's about protecting small farms and being able to continue to farm in urban areas. So the current Georgia law divides the issue into two situations. Number one, the farm starts operating before the complaining neighbors arrive. In this situation, the current Georgia right to farm law applies, and the complainers are not allowed to file a lawsuit if the farm has been in operation more than a year, even if technology or the operations of the farm have expanded in that time. The second issue, the farm starts operating after the complaining neighbors arrive. In this situation, regular nuisance laws apply, and the neighbors have 4 years to file that nuisance claim. We have a little ambiguity, as I mentioned, in the law that this legislation tries to make abundantly clear to both the neighbor and the farmer. We want to try to keep out of litigation as much as we can. Under current law, there can be cases where a farm could be operating prior to the neighbor moving in, and yet the farm would not have right to farm protection. Additionally, it is highly unlikely that any urban farm would ever have protection under current law. So what this bill does, Number one, supports the legislative intent to conserve, protect, and encourage development and improvement of ag, forest land, and the facilities. Our ag economy is huge in this state, and we want it's a very balanced economy and varied type of production we have, and we want to keep that diversity we have. Number two, it removed the concept of change conditions. This is where a lot of things got confusing. So the granted nuisance protection is determined by the farm's operation, not the irrelevant conditions of the area around the farm, which the farmer actually cannot control. Number three, the time frame for right to farm protection to be granted has not changed. Let me repeat that. The time frame for right to farm protection, this bill, is not changed. Protection can be granted after a year of operation of the farm, and then neighbors have 4 years to file a nuisance claim. However, if response to concerns raised, we have added a section to make it abundantly clear that if a farm converts to a type of operation that qualifies as a CAFO, confined animal facility operation, the time clock resets to allow adequate opportunity for neighbors to pursue action. So I heard loud and clear that concern from a lot of neighbors and a lot of people. We put that in the sub. Number four, it will allow farms to claim nuisance protection after that time when operating where and how they are supposed to. It does not allow for protection to be granted if a farm is operating illegally, improperly, or negligence. This bill does not address that. There are no additional protections for CAFOs, but if a small operation does add a few head of cattle or does modify their farms, like we all do, we all change operation, diversify a little bit, then it is protection, but it is not blanket protection. This bill does not change a single environmental standard, law, rule, or regulations. Let me repeat that. This does not give farms immunity if they are not following law, rule, or regulations. And so really, and of course, again, all local zoning control is maintained. It does not override any type of local, state, or federal regulation or zoning. So when the present law was passed, why do we need this? So when the present law was passed years ago, we didn't have neighbors that did not farm. All your neighbors were farmers, or at least had some interest in it. Now urban encroachment is happening all over Georgia, and people who normally do not live near agricultural operations are now living next door to many of us. This bill is needed to provide reasonable nuisance protection for farms, so our existing and future farms, I'm looking after future farmers too, both urban and rural, can survive. Farms which are not operating legally have no protection under this legislation. I want everyone here to understand that. This does not give farmers protection if they're not operating within the laws, rules, and regulations. So that is it in a nutshell. Mr. Chairman, I have listened to a lot of people on this bill, tried to take all concerns into consideration. I'm a farmer, and I live on my farm and have lots of neighbors, and so I want our farm neighborhoods and businesses to get along with neighbors in a good and reasonable way, and I think this bill is a good balance. I've also talked Dave Berry, a legal counsel, has worked on this. He has looked at several areas. Last meeting, we heard possibility. I know some of you asked about the constitutionality of it. And I've asked Buck Dixon to come speak to that very briefly. I know I'm being very careful. We do have pretty good laws here in the state of Georgia now, and I want to protect that, protect those, and I know that was a concern. Buck, if you could go to the podium there, and Sam, if you get him, And Buck, if you could address that, I know Dave Barry has weighed in and talked with this too, and we're trying to balance, make sure what we're doing is good.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Buck Dixon. I'm with Troutman Pepper, representing the Georgia Poultry Federation. And as to the question of constitutionality, across the country, right to farm acts have come under fire in certain states. And in those states, when the question of constitutionality arises, courts have overwhelmingly found that the right to farm statutes are facially constitutional. So that's the first step of the constitutionality test. What facial constitutionality means is, in order to show an act is facially unconstitutional, a plaintiff must show that it would be unconstitutional under any application of the law. If it does not meet that test, then you go to the as applied standard. And at that point, you basically take the act and you look at it in light of the facts of the specific case at issue. And as applied to those facts, if there is if there's a constitutional issue, that's where the court would rule on that. There was a recent case from 2018 in Iowa that addressed this. In that case, the court found that the statute there was it was not facially unconstitutional, and then it ultimately reversed a lower court decision which found that it was unconstitutional based on an as applied basis. And in reasoning, the court reversed the lower court's decision based on the fact that the lower court did not go through the as applied standard for that particular case. There's also been additional recent case law out of North Carolina back in December. The court there, I believe it was the Court of Appeals, heard a facial constitutional challenge to their Right to Farm Act, and that court there found that it was not facially unconstitutional and upheld the current statute. So that's just a high level overview to kind of pack that in. If there was a challenge to this law based on its constitutionality, the court would first look on its face to see if the plaintiff can demonstrate that it's facially unconstitutional. As I just said, there's courts across the country have determined that these laws are facially constitutional. And at that point, determining whether on an as applied basis the statute is unconstitutional, they would then move to how this particular statute would be implemented based on the facts in a given case.
Thank you, Buck. I don't think but a couple of people here really understood it, a little bit Matthew and Marvin, but but my point, Mr. Chairman, is I've really tried to thread the needle here, really try not to take a big jump to do anything that would really jeopardize the constitutionality of what we have here now, and to ensure going forward. And that's really the impetus of this bill, is really going forward to make sure there's some certainty in the law that we rule under here. So I'll be welcome to take any questions.
Okay. Well, I just want to first thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your work on this bill. And I know that agriculture is truly the duty that lies nearest to you. And you've been very thorough and tried to make sure that everything was like it should be. And you have another generation of farmers taking over your operation, and I can definitely support that, as I have another generation as well that I hope that can continue to farm for many, many years. So I appreciate your work.
That's
on this
true.
bill.
I hope my son Lee stays in the fields and not in the courtroom. So that's a little bit what this is about.
Good
Thank
deal.
you. I know Dave Bear is also open to any questions from the members as well, too.
Okay. Well, I think we've got a couple here, Mr. Chairman. Who's number 11? Representative Ricky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Dickey. You know that we've watched y'all work hard on this bill for, gosh, almost every year that I've been here, 6 or 7 years, and all the hard work that's went into it. I see President Tom McCall in the room, and I know that he's worked hard on this and Farm Bureau, but I sent you a couple of articles this weekend where I was doing some reading that we've lost nearly 40 million acres of farmland in this country over the last 20 years, and that urban sprawl and development is irreversibly depleting farmland. And I just don't want this to go unsaid, is that this is irreversible. If some of these things were to prevent or prohibit farmers from continuing to be able to produce the food that we eat, that feeds the country and the world, we'll be at 9 billion people on this planet by the year 2050. And we can't go back and reclaim some of this land if we lose it. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your hard work, and others in this room that have worked hard. And in particular, in the district that I serve, of the top 10 commodities, every one of them are grown in my district within just 150 yards of my house in some cases. So thank y'all so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Representative. I just want to make sure Georgia's farmers do it in a responsible way as well. We're great stewards for our land and our farms, and we're very cognizant of our neighbors, and I just want to make sure we can all do it in harmony and working together. And I know the realities of our growth in our state, and I just want to try to find a balance here that we can both do the farming we need to do, and the urban folks can have the best value for those crops.
Number 24, Chairman Hogan.
At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
All right, hold on to that motion. Let me get a few more questions here. Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill. We have struggled long and hard over years to see if we can come up with a balance, something that is going to work for us. I truly regret missing the hearing, but I did have a few questions because, our overall objective is we want to make sure that people in this state are able to continue to do what we do. I mean, we came as farmers, basically. That's who Georgians are. And we don't want to do anything to impede upon that. Having said that, we also want to be good neighbors. So I had a few questions.
Okay.
And one of them is that I'm trying to see, you mentioned that there was a 4-year window upon which people could make a nuisance claim.
That's the present law now.
That's the present law
We did
now.
not change that. We did not narrow it down. We did not shorten it. And it's worked well.
And really it should. I mean, if you don't do anything for 4 years, then right. I mean, I'm out here working, getting going, and all of a sudden you're gonna shut me down. I'm not feeling that. How long, where is it then that we changed the nuisance protection from what is current law to this bill now?
We did not change any time frame in this. It's a year from the start of the nuisance. It's a year, we have a year period in there
Well, what
for the
is it?
nuisance to happen.
Okay.
Hold on, Mr. Chairman. I think Dave may want to provide some clarification.
Yeah, the 4-year timeframe, Mr. Chairman, does not appear in the bill text because that is referring to the time that you have to actually file your claim, and it's in the general nuisance title statute. So it's in an earlier section of code from what we're dealing with, but it applies here. The 1-year timeframe that is at the heart of this bill is the time during which the farm can become a nuisance. So activities rise to the level of a quote unquote nuisance, but they might still have that 4-year statute of limitations to actually file it and prove and go through the case and prove that it was a nuisance. Does that make sense?
For clarity, I own a farm. I used to plant tomatoes, and now I ended up getting part of the livestock that will perhaps create a nuisance for an individual. So is it my understanding that once you start that operation and a nuisance occurs within a year, I have an opportunity to make that claim?
I believe that's correct. So if the operation begins and it becomes a nuisance within 1 year of beginning that operation, then you would be able to, so your neighbor would be able to file a nuisance claim against
Within
you
four,
within 4 years.
within four.
That's my understanding.
Well, you the lawyer, so I was looking at I was looking at my chairman, but he looked at you too. Okay, you said something about a K4 protection. Can you kind of expound on that a little?
If a farm converts to a CAFO, the time clock starts all over again. So to a medium or large CAFO, the clock will start. If I'm farming my farm peaches right now, and all of a sudden I want to go to a large CAFO, it gives the neighbors a whole nother. The clock starts again.
Okay.
I don't have that immunity carried forward just because I've been farming peaches. Now I'm doing something different, and we spell that out in this bill.
Okay, and if you fall into my area where I'm already having this kind of operation with your urbanism, then basically you're on your own. I mean, okay, I'm doing
Of course, we've
pigs.
got lots of protections, as you know, our Department of Ag and our
Absolutely.
EPD have lots of rules and regulations. They oversee a lot of operations of our agricultural operations all over this state. So I think, I think we've got some pretty good rules and regs there. And that would cover those.
I'm
but
sorry, I posed the question wrong.
This is just nuisance.
If I'm already operating and I'm already doing this, and you decide to buy a 200-acre tract next to where I'm operating, and you want to put a subdivision or development there, then basically I have the protection because you
That's
came
correct.
into my area.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, thank you.
Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to kind of follow up with what Dominic was saying. And I know from one of my very first ag classes at UK in 1979, 4% of the population was feeding the world. We're down to 2.8%, I believe was the last number I saw. President McCall could probably confirm that, but I believe it's 2.8%. That is not very many people that are supplying an awful lot of food. And as we keep losing farmland, if we don't protect farmland, it's going to be a disaster for not only this country, but everybody else. So thank you for bringing this and just help you move it forward.
I think we got one more, Mr. Chairman. Representative Camp.
Thank you. And thank you, Chairman, for bringing this to us. This very important bill. As a person who lives in an area that is experiencing urban sprawl, this is a very important bill to many people in my community. So thank you for that. One thing that I just want you to verify, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but this in no way impacts zoning or plans, development plans for a community in any capacity. Those communities still have the ability to zone their properties as they see fit. So an operation coming in as agriculture could not come in commercial or industrial or residential without a great deal of rezoning, which would be a huge undertaking for any organization or individual to do. That is correct.
That is correct. Very well stated.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, we've already got a motion on the floor, and we've got a second. Is there any further discussion? I don't see any further discussion. That was for the motion. So all those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Mr. Chairman, I think your bill passes. So
Thank you.
congratulations
Thank you,
and appreciate all the hard work.
Appreciate consideration. Not yet. Thanks, Chairman Watson. Next on our agenda HB 1175, Chairman Purple, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. I've talked to some of my members that said I was a little bit long-winded than the last time. We have discussed this rather vigorously. We had really good debate. I took what we'd heard and talked about and transformed this bill. I'd like to thank members of the study committee that actually worked with me on this legislation. The farm visits we made, the dialogue was exceedingly helpful to look at the issue. The farmers that we saw and talked with, lead counsel Dave Berry, I thank him for his first and second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth drafts of this bill. I'm just thankful he still lets me in his office. And I'd like to thank, if it's not out of line, Representative Rebecca Mitchell. I don't know how she's going to vote on this bill, and it don't really matter. I can say that she helped make this bill better. So I did want to say that without stepping down. She and I might have different voting methods and the way that we vote, but she was willing to engage me with dialogue, and for that I'm grateful. She was always willing to take my call, and she actually did help me craft this bill, and I want to thank you in public. Now you could start the stopwatch. I said I'd take a minute, 15 seconds, and this is my intro. So the changes we made to this bill from the last time, it was 22 pages, it's 20 pages now. Here are the changes, the substantive changes that we made. Now for the raw milk, it is direct to consumer. My desire is to do baby steps. This is not trying to open the door. This will be, the consumer knows what they're getting because it is going to be a direct to consumer. And, sometime in the future, I could visit that. But right now, let's take baby steps. Only raw milk and not raw milk products are covered with this. So it will be raw milk only. There's several changes at the behest. And I'd like to thank the Department of Agriculture. I did forget to mention them, but thank them for their suggestions and their input. Sampling and testing methodologies that were requested by the department are reflected in this bill, and also made it clear that you can't transport across state lines. And those are the substantive changes to the bill. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that presentation. We got a question. Chairman Corbett.
I just want to thank you for bringing this bill and addressing the question that my constituent had about, being able to bring it across state lines. And you answered that question. I appreciate you working with us on that. And for somebody that's, I guess, allergic to raw milk, actually presenting this bill, I think that's amazing.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what the rules are regarding this, but I'll check with my friend after the meeting.
You have another question, Representative Mitchell, and I'd also like to say this committee is very fortunate to have her expertise and engage with her as well on this bill. And it gives me a lot of confidence. Somebody looking after it is her is too. So thank you, Representative Mitchell.
Wow, well, thanks. I really appreciate how far this bill has come because I know when we started, it was a very different looking bill. And when it is appropriate time, I would like to offer two amendments, one of which is simply a language change. Would you like me to explain a little bit about why I will be offering amendments? Is that acceptable at this point?
We'll do it at a proper time.
Okay.
A little bit later. Okay, I'll take some questions and then we'll go to that if we will. We'll be right back. Representative Scoggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, at the proper time, make a motion.
Okay, the motion is to
Do pass.
we have a motion do pass. I'm trying to make sure I need a second. Got a second. Okay, now we're going to ask for questions and Representative Mitchell. Mitchell, you have an amendment request.
this is. So I have two requests. The first one would be amendment on the label section of this, where right now the label just says that this is an unpasteurized milk product. I would like to amend that to include the language that's currently on our raw milk sold for animal consumption. That includes this product has not been pasteurized and may contain harmful bacteria, so that people are aware what the significance of purchasing that unpasteurized product is.
Do you have where in the bill wording or?
It will be line 137.
Okay.
He has it memorized. Oh, it has actually moved. So it's actually now line 148. So this raw milk product is not pasteurized and may contain harmful bacteria would be the edit. Wait, do I have the wrong version? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Lead Council Barry.
I was just going to report that amendment to get everyone on the same page. If that's okay with you, it would be on line 137 after the word pasteurized, inserting the phrase a period and then the phrase this product may contain harmful bacteria. Is that right?
I think you could be more concise even and just say has not been pasteurized and may contain harmful bacteria. That's in the same exact language that is currently on milk that folks are consuming.
Okay, do you have a second amendment?
I do. I have a suggestion. So when we initially started this process, one of our objectives was to make sure that we are not getting less quality milk out to Georgia consumers. And a part of that was focusing on making sure that fewer people were actually consuming raw milk that was designed for animal feed. And so I would like to offer an amendment that says on or after January 1st, 2025, commercial feed for which raw milk is the sole or primary feed ingredient shall be distributed solely by the milk producer at the production source for retail purposes. No person shall knowingly distribute such commercial feed for human consumption. So that would actually be the balance of the other half of this. One is permitting a human milk stream and the other is reducing the amount of unregulated milk that is being consumed by humans by putting restrictions on the animal feed portion.
Okay. Council, have you got that?
I do, Mr. Chair. So she read it out to you. I don't have it in front of me exactly, even though I did draft it earlier. But one thing to note about that is that that is going in Title 2, which is the commercial feed section of the code. So it's creating a new section 21315. And as she reported, this would be on or after January 1, 2025. Commercial feed for which raw milk is the sole or primary feed ingredient shall be distributed solely by the milk producer at the production source for retail purposes. No person shall knowingly distribute such commercial feed for human consumption. And I can repeat that if anybody needs it.
Yeah,
Or
let's
explain further.
repeat that. Be clear.
Yeah, the gist of it is that if the commercial feed is primarily raw milk or solely raw milk, and that's commercial feed includes anything for agricultural animals, it includes pet food, anything. If it is the sole or primary feed ingredient, then it has to be distributed, one, by the milk producer, so the person who owns the cows, and two, at the production source, and three, for retail purposes. So you can't wholesale your raw milk from your farm. You would have to do it for retail at the production source. And no person shall knowingly distribute that commercial feed, that raw milk, for human consumption. So if somebody comes up and says, hey, I want to drink some raw milk, then they wouldn't be allowed to sell it to them.
Okay, we've got two amendments offered by Representative Mitchell. The author of the bill,
Can I
can you
respond?
speak to either,
Certainly.
speak
Certainly.
to the last?
So let me speak to the
amendment.
last first. I would be in opposition to that amendment, respectfully to my friend. I said that she was very helpful, and she actually was. It doesn't mean we agreed on everything. So she is very helpful. I respectfully disagree on that. Somewhat concerned about germaneness, going from chapter title 26 to title 2. I would. I'm not saying that's not something that should be done at a future time, but it should be done on a different bill, in my opinion. So I would be in opposition to that one. I would also be in opposition to the first one. That was less concerning to me about the labeling, but since we are doing now, it's not retail sales. This is direct to consumer. And so my personal feeling is the label already spells out that this is, she said I had it memorized and I thought I did, but I can't find where the heck it's at now, but I done gone by it. That's what happens when you talk kindly about a colleague that I can't find it, but here it is on 137. So this is a raw milk product that is not pasteurized. It's not in little bitty print. I do have 12-point font. And since it is direct to consumer, I feel like the amendment would bear possibly that I would consider it more favorably if this was in retail source and there's not, but you're actually purposely, going to buy this. So I would be in opposition to both of them, but that's how I wanted to address those, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We got some comments and questions on the amendments. Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the second amendment, we've got raw milk going into these different products now. Are they all sold directly from the manufacturing source, or are they going through some type of distributor? I mean, that to me, it sounds like we're almost going to change the flow of how it's going into animal feed and different things if it has to go all the way back to the farmer. Is there anybody that can clarify that? If we're creating another problem or not, Mr. President? Yeah, I mean, they're not buying that directly from the farmer, so it's going someplace, and then I think that might be changing the entire structure of how that works.
I would certainly not. Representative Mitchell can put. I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but one of the concerns she has is the issue that we're trying to address is that we're uncomfortable with currently how pet milk is sold and a lot of human consumption. We don't know because it's illegal right now for human consumption. So we really don't know how widespread that is, but the prevailing opinion is there's a lot of that going on. And I think that is her concern regarding addressing the feed label. I would like to emphasize that I would be opposed to it because of the germaneness, and perhaps that's better for another bill at another time.
Now, on the first one, and I understand your disagree, but I've always thought one of the biggest problems we've had, if we've lost, and I've already mentioned how much that we've lost people from the farm, is we've got to do a better job educating them. And while I understand fully well what it's not pasteurized means, I'm probably more in support of that one, where the more people understand what they're drinking and it may or may not contain something, I think might be better off. So I think there's a good compromise there that we ought to look at. So.
Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my concern is this, and that is, I genuinely feel like people should have the right to kind of do whatever it is that they want to do. I mean, if you want to drink raw milk, then you can drink that. But I think as policymakers and as legislators, we probably should try to make sure that they have as much information as possible to let them know If this what you want to do, it's okay with me. Your choice. But I think as policymakers, we probably should try to see if we can put as much transparency on that as possible.
Got a couple more questions, Representative Camp.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chairman Perkle, for this bill. It was a pleasure to be on the study committee for this because it was very illuminating what our dairy farmers are going through right now. And certainly we want to make sure that we keep the dairies we have in Georgia open. That's a huge concern. Just on Representative Mitchell's request, I pulled up the Department of Agriculture. They do have a consumer advisory. Consuming raw or undercooked foods may increase the risk of foodborne illness. That is something that it lists on a litany of things: beef, fish, pork, shellfish, eggs, lamb, poultry. Certainly the Department of Agriculture, I think, could add raw milk to that list if they wanted to, correct? Without necessarily changing it and changing the label.
I would feel uncomfortable speaking for the department.
Thank you.
I would also feel uncomfortable. Never mind. I shouldn't say that.
Well, I mean, that is something. I mean, I eat sushi, I eat medium rare steaks. I'm just telling you all my business now.
Yeah.
But I think we all do, assume some inherent risk in consuming products. And, that would just be an opportunity rather than amending the label. Again, pasteurization is something that I do agree with Representative Kirby. Unfortunately, we live in a society where consumers don't always fully understand. Thank you.
One more question, Representative LaRicchia, speak to the amendments.
I'd have to agree with Chairman Perkle that the word may is a lot like the word if. And, all my life I was heard, if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his butt every time he jumps. But there's all kind of mays that might be in something. It may, well, if you're gonna put on a label that it may have harmful bacteria, then finish up by saying, but it may not. Don't assume that because we are in that area of raw milk agriculture now you can drink that, but it may kill you. That's kind of what the message you're sending. But that's not what it does. I certainly wouldn't be in favor of that amendment.
Thank you. We have two amendments. We're going to take up the second one first. Representative Mitchell, do you want any other comments from you?
I mean, I will comment that there are 84 current owners of a pet milk license here in Georgia, and you can actually go click on each of those individual owners and go to their Facebook page and their website and see what product they are selling. And I encourage everyone in this committee before the House floor vote to go look at that and tell me what percentage of those people are not selling directly for human consumption, because I actually did part of that list, and I can say that I am currently concerned that what we would be doing if we did not pass this with this amendment is create 2 raw milk streams in Georgia at this point. So that is my concern with the amendment. Whether it needs to be modified, I would certainly be open to that discussion. And I think I have been very open with that discussion. However, all of the farm advocates who have come up were supportive of that type of amendment happening because they did understand that inherently we want to offer a safer product. So that is why that amendment was proposed. And if we look at those 84 licenses, and you did see someone who was specifically selling for veal calf milk, that would be a different space. But until I see that, the reason is because when I checked, it did not look like there was much agricultural use with these specific licenses.
Okay. Any other questions of the author of the amendment or the author of the bill? Hearing none, we'll vote on the second amendment first. That's the rules. Huh?
You need a second.
Okay. We got a motion from Representative Mitchell. Do I hear a second? Got a second? Any other discussion on this, on the second amendment from Representative Mitchell? All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, noes have it. The amendment fails. We will go to the Representative Mitchell's first amendment. Do I have do I have a second? Got a second on the First Amendment? Any other discussion on that amendment? All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
No.
Those opposed, are in favor unless I would like a vote. Anybody, are you okay? Would you like a vote? Okay. What? Okay, so those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, those opposed? Okay, the motion fails, the amendment fails, excuse me. Okay, now we're back to the original bill without any amendments. We got a motion and we got a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Perkle. HB 1175 passes on to Rules Committee. That is the only agenda items we have today. Thank you for staying for this meeting. I appreciate the attendance.